Hello and welcome. I'm Amritanshu Rai and you're watching Law of the Land on Rajya Sabha TV. Today we bring to you the Maternity Benefit Amendment Bill 2016. To discuss the issue, I have with me Mrs. Madhvi Diwan, Advocate Supreme Court, and activist Shabnam, Hashmi. Now for the highlights. The Maternity Benefit Amendment Bill 2016 proposes to increase more than double the existing number of days to 26 weeks. The bill seeks to facilitate work from home if both the mother and her employer agree to it. The bill extends maternity benefits to both commissioning and adopting mothers by allowing them 12-week maternity leave. The Maternity Benefit Amendment Bill 2016 proposes to increase maternity leave to 6.5 months from the existing 3 months. The increase in the maternity leave exceeds ILO's minimum standard of 24 weeks and brings the country to third position in terms of the number of weeks of maternity leave.
By increasing the maternity leave for the mother, government seeks to benefit the mothers by allowing them to take care of the child during the formative stage of the child. These provisions aim to have a positive impact on the health and well-being of the children and mothers.
I think at the outset, from industry side, we should welcome it because welfare, there cannot be two opinions about the welfare of the women. So we welcome it. And second thing is that it has broad-based the scope of the legislation. Two new categories have been brought within the ambit of this legislation. One is the commissioning mother and adopting mother. This is a welcome sign. Even those who want to adopt the child and do not get time to rear them, I think they will get time now.
The Maternity Benefit Amendment Bill enhances the maternity leave due to a pregnant employee from the existing 12 weeks to 26 weeks for the first 2 surviving children. The maternity benefit could be availed 6 weeks before from the date of expected delivery. The bill changes this to 8 weeks. The bill mandates every establishment to inform the women employees about the benefits available in the law in written as well as electronic medium at the time of her employment. The bill makes it mandatory for an establishment having more than 50 employees to have a creche facility either individually or as a shared common facility within the prescribed distance. Also, the mother of the child will be allowed to visit her child 4 times a day in the rest intervals allowed to her. The bill seeks to facilitate work from home to mothers if the nature of work is such that it can be done from home. This can be done only with the consent of the women and the employer. The bill also extends maternity benefit to both commissioning and adopting mothers by allowing them a 12-week maternity benefit from the date when the child is handed over.
To my best understanding, 70 to 80% of the women are in the unorganized sector who are working and who are on the daily wage or who are in household work, supporting household maids and other kinds of works that they are in, or in the agricultural labor. So the key element to this is, how do you put this bill as a spirit under which it is taken, not just by organized sector but by unorganized sector also.
The bill attempts to improve the work-life balance of women workers and to have a positive impact on women's participation in labor force. The Maternity Benefit Amendment Bill 2016 was introduced in the Rajya Sabha on August 11, 2016 by the Minister of Labour and Employment, Bandaru Dattatreya.
In around 2.8 crore of workforce in the organised sector, 18 lakh working women will be benefited by this bill. Although it's a progressive bill, but it leaves a very important and vast section of the society, which is the unorganized sector, where problems like malnourishment prevail in a much higher number in comparison to the organized sector. With cameraman D.K. Pandey, Dipali Pandit for Rajya Sabha Television.
A step forward. But the issue, ma'am, I would like you to address is the original bill, the actual law, maternity law, clearly states that 80 days in the last 1 year, if anyone who has worked for 80 days in the last 1 year will have to be given these benefits. Doesn't clarify whether it's organized or not organized. Now, does that bring into ambit the unorganized workers, women workers, and does it extend the benefit to them in any way through
Well,
this?
it doesn't appear to cover the unorganized sector at all. But if I may just preface, I think we need to just look at what the objectives are before we proceed further. One is, of course, that you want to create equality of opportunity for women. You want to ensure that women remain in the workforce, that there is some incentive for them to remain in the workforce. And third, you want to ensure that children are taken care of, they are breastfed, etc. in the first few months. So I think if looking at this, I think this is a step forward. It may not, clearly, because there's not just the unorganized sector. There are vast organized sectors also which are not covered. For example, professional women, etc., and professional fields, etc. But of course, it is a step forward.
But just to get back there, how do you include the professionals who are? I mean, how do you include them?
You see, so long as they are employed, they ought to be covered by some kind of maternity benefit. So, for example, I mean, you may have graduated from the top law school in the country, but when you go to a top law firm for a job at age, say, 25 or 26, a woman is asked that, why would I spend 2 and 3 years training you if you're going to be married and having children in the next few years? So, and it is a practical problem. I mean, you have to look at it also from the employer's point of view, because the employer is investing a certain amount of time and money on training people. So I think there has to be some kind of balance where you incentivize women to remain in the profession, and get, it shouldn't be from the employer's point of view a liability, because that's what's often happening. Even if you look at, for example, there are certain welfare legislations or progressive legislations, like even the sexual harassment legislation. It's turned into a, in some ways, it's become a disincentive, because I see this practically. There are, top men lawyers who don't want to take in women interns at all, or women young lawyers at all, because they don't want to deal with those situations, and they don't want to, have any kind of so it shouldn't be that a woman becomes a liability, or this the thought of having to employ a woman is like, oh my God, then why should I not take? Because there is no requirement to have to employ the same number of women as you do men.
Yeah, correct. So, in the private sector, especially in the organized sector, there's no reservation. And the point she's made is, okay, this is well-meaning, but the state will obviously implement it, or would try to implement it in its arms or whatever departments. But in the private sector, since there's no reservation for women, or there's no equal opportunity kind of a thing, so what happens? Do you see the employers choosing or looking the other way? Because this then becomes a little difficult for them to, sustain.
You see, you are very right, because at the entry point, if the employer has to give 6 months benefit to the woman, then if he has a choice, he or she has a choice, they would go in for the man. Because it is one, that this money is coming out of them. There is a need to create a social security. There is a need to create a pool, like it is done in most of the countries. That social benefits come from a pool which the employee, the employer, the government, through the taxes, gives money. It is not going out of the employer's pocket. All the money is not going out of the employer's pocket.
Right.
That has to be. And the second thing, which, since you mentioned it 2-3 times, because I am being an adoptive mother,
right,
I think whoever has drafted it has really no clue of what happens to an adopted child. For my biological son, I took 6 months off from my work.
Right.
But for my daughter, whom I adopted, I took more than 1 year off, because an adopted child comes with malnourishment comes with very bad constitution. You require a lot more time and energy and caregiving to the adopted child. I think this 12-week point for the
doesn't work.
It won't work. And secondly, I don't like this word called commissioning mothers. There is a provision for the surrogate mothers, but what about the mother who is giving the birth? She also needs maternity benefits. She might not. One is that she is losing the child. She is producing it for someone else. So the mental trauma of losing a child is also huge. It is not only, maternity leave is not only for the benefit of the child, but also for the mother. You know, it is for both. So I think there is a need to look at that also.
On the adoptive part, ma'am, the 12 weeks that you mentioned, they've kept the category for 12 weeks applicable for two types. One is if you are having a third child, adoptive and commissioning. These are the terms that are used in the bill. Ma'am, is it really, because I mean, the issues of bearing a child are the same whether you go for the first or second or third?
Absolutely.
So why not extend it? So is there some sort of a line that the state wants to draw?
I think
incentivize two kids and not the third.
You see, one is that as it is, our society is very insensitive to adoption. There is a huge amount of all kinds of prejudices, and an adopted child otherwise also goes through. Even, you know, the fact that a child has been taken away or has been abandoned by the parents, it leaves a very deep impact on the child. And that child needs special care a lot more than your biological child. And I can say it being a mother of both. So, and the third child, it's not only, what has gone into their minds is that they want to do family planning. But one, that all women do not have that kind of control over their sexuality and over their bodies. It is not that they want to have a third child. Secondly, it is also discriminating against the third child. What has the poor child done?
That's the point I wanted. Madhvi, if you can expand a little on that third bit. Where is that discrimination? Because
absolutely, because ultimately the courts have said in so many cases that the overwhelming, the paramount importance is for the welfare of the child. Now, if as you rightly say, why should a third child be deprived of those months of breastfeeding? Simply because the parents have, it happens to be the third child. So that is certainly, it is discriminatory on the third child.
Time for us to head into a break. When we return, we will talk about the Maternity Benefits Law 1961, which is the principal law governing these benefits. Welcome back. The Maternity Benefits Law of 1961 aims to regulate employment of women before and after the birth of the child. The law also empowers the central government to direct the state government for compliance of the law, to which state governments can't refuse.
The existing law is in operation and is applicable to every factory, mine or plantation, establishments engaged in the exhibition of equestrian, acrobatics and other performances irrespective of the number of employees. Shops or establishments with more than 10 employees are also covered under this law.
It recognizes a woman who has had a baby by surrogacy as the commissioning mother. It is a very morale boosting step for both of these parties, because up to now, a woman who had infertility and needed surrogacy to have a mother had to go to court. Do you know there are 2 cases where women had to fight prolonged battle in the court, and that critical period of her bonding with her child was spent in the court, fighting for getting maternity leave. Now they will not have to do that anymore. 5% of couples who have infertility need surrogacy to get pregnant. So the government is looking at the interest of each and every segment.
employment of women is prohibited during 6 weeks immediately following her delivery, miscarriage, or medical termination of pregnancy. Also, the employer cannot make a pregnant employee do arduous work which may interfere with her pregnancy, cause miscarriage, or adversely affect her health during the period of 1 month immediately preceding the period of 6 weeks for which she does not avail of the leave.
I think more important is first to do this, that the paternal involvement in maternal health and in child health is absolutely mandatory for gender equality. The father as an integral part of child's growth or a child's development has to be there, and sharing has to happen. Why should it all be again pinned down to the women that it's her responsibility to take care of the child, or it's only her and not the father?
In case the employer violates the law, he can be penalized with a minimum imprisonment of 3 months and a fine which can go up to 2,000 rupees. In cases where the employer dismisses a pregnant employee, the imprisonment can go up to 1 year with maximum fine of 5,000 rupees.
Increasing maternity benefit was long due, but as child's growth and upbringing is a collective phenomena of man and women, experts are of the opinion that certain benefits should be given to man as well so that he could equally contribute. This would also help in bridging the gap between man and women in the professional front. With cameraman D.K. Pandey, Dipali Pandit for Rajya Sabha Television.
A lot of the law has evolved, and there's something that still is left out or needs to be included in this. Ma'am, I'll come to you. You were making a point about including the paternal aspect of it. What was it that
You see, one is that by saying that only women have 6 months leave and the fathers are not given, only given 15 days, we are again saying that it is the woman's duty. There is a whole mindset which does not believe in gender equality. Even in the 21st century, we are saying this. Secondly, what I was saying earlier, at the level of when you are going in for a job, if the employer knows that he has to give 6 months maternity benefit and 6 months paternity benefit, then there won't be any discrimination taking a woman or a man. If you don't do that, then the discrimination is going to be there. Plus, it is very important for Indian males and males across the world to understand that when they produce a child, it is their duty to bond with the child, to look after the child, to rear the child as much as it is mother's responsibility.
Ma'am, I agree with you, but just at the risk of being called backward, I would like to argue it further. I mean, what are the specific ways in which the father is actually involved, and why the leave for them? And why burden the entrepreneur with that excessive payment of 2 months or 1 month? Why?
No, one is that the child itself needs to bond with both the parents, not only mother. Secondly, after giving a birth, during the childbirth, which is in India, the men consider that they don't need to be near their wife. In fact, most of the cases, the wife is sent to the mother's place. It is very important for men to be there, to be holding her hand when she is going through this labor pain. And it is something, I think, the worst pain which women go through. After that, when the child is, whether it is breastfeeding the child, which only the woman can do, but there are hundreds of things which a child needs to be needs done. Yeah. And it is the father's responsibility also. And father also, we always keep on talking about MAMTA. I mean, do we think that men are not human beings, that they don't have hearts, that they don't love their children? We have also created stereotypes for men as if men are heartless and they have no bonding with the children. If the father is at home for 6 months, there would be a very different bonding with the child.
Ma'am, I would like you to address one point that ma'am left out. Is it correct or reasonable to burden the entrepreneur? One, the maternity burden, they are ready to take it. But if you add in the paternal side, the paternity leave aspect, you are again burdening him. And do you think the entrepreneurs in our country have evolved to the extent that they can consider it progressive and will willingly adopt this new burden?
Well, I'm not sure they are even willing to absorb the maternity part of it. So, paternity is over
a far-fetched
and above
idea.
that. However, I mean, I think, yes, to ensure both maternity as well as paternity leave and perhaps divide it in some way may help to ensure, equal access for women to employment, because then it's not necessarily an additional disincentive for the employer to employ a woman over a man. But having said that, how are we going to ensure that that paternity leave is going to be used for the purpose for which it is given?
Yeah.
Because it is, I completely agree with Ms. Hashmi that, of course, fathers must have a meaningful participation, an equal participation if possible in the upbringing of their children. However, the reality is that we are a very patriarchal society. And there are very deeply ingrained notions of what child the upbringing of a child entails. And unless we are able to, just by giving leave is not going to ensure, he'd probably be whiling away his time somewhere else, and the burden will eventually fall on the working mother. However, what I feel should be done, and this is both for men as well as women, where is it in our our education? We are churning out hundreds and thousands of women professionals. They come out of top law schools. They've done fabulously well for themselves in law school or in other professional colleges. But, the equality ends there. Because it's when you come out into the real world that you realize, whether, you're a factory worker or you are, a top professional, you realize that it's not such an equal world because, of certain social compulsions, of certain social presumptions, and yes, you want a family, you want to bring it up well, and that's where the problem arises. So you have to have, and I think even women are completely unprepared for this, and you can see oftentimes the kind of frustration that young women face when they find they've been great students, they've made it to top say law firms, and then when they have a family and they find that whole thing is sort of their professional aspirations sort of come crumbling down because they just cannot cope. So we have to start at the why is it not a part of your professional education?
So there's
both men and women. Both men and women.
I agree, ma'am. We've run out of time. Moving on, my colleague Dipali Pandit spoke to Dr. Shakuntala Srivastava, Chief Medical Officer, NSFG, and tried to get her point of view.
How do you look at the provisions in the Maternity Benefit Amendment Bill 2016?
I feel very happy that this step has been taken. All other developed countries have already taken this initiative, and it's good that our Honorable Prime Minister has taken this initiative, and this has put India at number 3 position. With this, I think women would be encouraged to bear a child in the healthier age group reproductive period, and this would definitely build up emotional bond between mother and child, which usually would lag because of earlier joining of the mothers who are in the workforce. Of course, when I'm talking about this, I'm talking only of the organized sector. I'm not talking about the unorganized sector. When I'm saying organized sector, I'm talking about only 10% of the women workforce, and unorganized sector 90%. So it is meeting to, at least I would say it's a way forward.
The commissioning mother and the adopting mother will get 12 weeks of maternity benefits. Do you think that is enough?
I feel that is enough, because the child, if it is less than 2 years, when you are adopting at a certain stage. It's not a newly born child which the mother is adopting. So that breastfeeding period and these nitty-gritties are not a component of the case when we are talking about adopted mother. So I think that is enough for her to establish a system in a household and build up a bond with the adopted child for carrying out a stable environment around the child.
And thank you, ma'am, for joining us on this discussion. It's time for us to end the show. You can email your suggestions and comments to law.rstv@gmail.com. You can also watch our show on the RSTV page of YouTube. We'll be back with a new issue and a new episode. Keep watching Rajya Sabha TV.